Good morning, Pinellas County Schools, families, and community, and welcome to our Parent Academy Power Hour, Teams, Owning My Learning. My name is Sheila Kane, and I'm the District Coordinator for Family and Community Engagement. I'm excited to introduce our panelists today, Dr. Valerie Brim, the Director of the Office of Strategic Partnerships, Vivian Brim, teacher at Tyrone Middle School, Fred Whitaker, Assistant Principal at Countryside High School, and Sarah Trulson, Digital Learning Program Coordinator. Before we get started, I have some Zoom particulars to go over. You are all currently muted and may unmute yourselves upon direction during the presentation to participate in any question or answers. You may also use the chat feature to type in your comments or questions. There is a specific time set aside for Q&A at the end of the session, so if we don't address your questions during the session, don't worry, we will get to them in the Q&A. We may use the Zoom breakout rooms feature to allow us some small group discussion during the presentation. You will be randomly assigned to rooms and should unmute yourselves for the 3 minutes of discussion. Now to get us started with the presentation today, I will hand off to Dr. Brim.
Good morning. So if you can move to the next slide. Good morning and welcome to Teams, Owning My Learning. And I think this is a very important webinar, particularly when we're in a time of digital learning, and that the responsibility of the student learning is going to heavily rest on the student and the parent at home. We're going to be looking at the teacher is not only the instructional staff for content purposes and the facilitator, but the goal is to transfer that learning to the learner. So here are the key objectives: understanding what it means for your child to own his or her learning, understanding what happens when a student owns his or her learning. There are going to be indicators that you could look for to be able to determine, yes, my student not only mastered that learning, but I'm confident that the learning has transferred. Understanding key steps to successful learning. What are some key dynamics that you can look for as a parent regarding successful learning? Suggested roles and responsibilities for parents. And it's always great, not that we do not believe as their first teachers that you do not know, but with the society of education being so fluid, it is so important that you know what educators are thinking, that we are a partnership together, and how that looks as the role for the parents. Next slide. Next slide, Ms. Kane. So we're shifting over to a video that is called Shift Happens. And we're going to play this video, but during this video, I want you to think futuristic. I want you to be able to think about not my learner now, but my learner as he progresses in his learning levels, and how will he compete globally. So you can go ahead and play the video. Okay, so I am not sure if any of you have ever seen that video. Next slide, please. But I do want to take a time. We don't have enough to open up into a breakout room, but I want to hear also from our participants as well as our educators that are on this morning. What was some aha moments for you, and what was kind of some shocking information? And I think it's important to have this quick dialogue because it lends, it gives insight as to how, as educators, we must prepare our learners, but also as parents, how do we make sure, again, that learning is transferring? One of the things that was aha for me was when they said China, and if you know the population of China, that their primary language is English. And so I think that that was just alarming that a country speaks English and we are the English speaking nation. And then the other alarming component was that India honor kids are the same population of our students in school. So when you think about India saying that the number of kids that are in their honor programs are deemed advanced matches the total population of our student enrollment or student population, I just think that was another aha. Anybody else that want to chime in and talk about their ahas?
I'll say something. I think an aha moment for me watching the video was just to kind of see how fast information is being given to us at such a quick rate that we're almost automatically always behind. How we have to prepare our kids now for jobs that aren't even invented yet. So that was the aha for me.
Deb Bushman mentioned that it was just the information that is being created. And that is so true. It's just so much volume of information, and it's a new age where students have access to the volume of information that is being created. And so when you think about us moving to a digital learning platform and how it altered our way of work, it altered the student's way of working, learning, to understand that is the way of the future. The face-to-face is slowly going to phase out, and this entire educational platform could be very well digital. So I think that's important. Any other comments before we move forward? Okay, next slide. So what does it mean to own learning? Ownership of learning means that the learner is motivated, engaged, and self-directed. I always look for a self-directed learner. Even in the workplace, I look for employees and workers that minimizes needing instruction, that they are self-directed, self-innovators, that they think, they're motivated about their jobs, they're engaged. So you think about that with a learner. It means that they can monitor their own progress and able to reflect their learning based on the mastery of the content. And so when a person can examine the content and determine, yes, I've mastered this skill, that is a clear mindset that this person is owning their learning. Next slide. Oh, next slide, Ms. Kane. Okay, so next slide, it is still on the same slide. Okay, so how do you know that learning has transferred? When we think about an educator, again, an educator's role is not only to be instructional in the sense of transferring the information, the knowledge, the content to the student, but they also a facilitator of learning. But the highly effective teachers will make sure and know that what they have delivered unto the students, that information has transferred. So transfer of learning occurs when the student is motivated by the topic. They're motivated to learn again, has previous knowledge on the subject, knows how to connect new information, knows how to connect new information to existing information. And that's important. When you take new information and you connect it to something existing, or you connect it to something that you want to be innovative for, that's what you're taking. You're taking theory and making it applicable to real life. The learner must be able to retrieve this information and apply it to new learning. Parents, so that's when you really know learning has transferred. Next slide. Okay, so there's 7 things that happens when a student owns their learning. 1, they fall in love with learning. We already know that. It's no different when you know you have an avid reader. The individual loves to read. They engage as innovators, and they have an innovator's mindset. They are looking how to take that learning and become innovative. It's a thought process. They develop a growth mindset. What does it mean? That they're looking for grade appropriate expectations, high level expectations. They're looking for teachers to challenge their learning, challenge their thinking. They are looking for their mindset to really grow. They become self-starters. And if you, sometimes over years and years, when you find out that you have had students that are very successful, you will reflect to know that they were self-starters in your classroom. They were the initiators. They were the ones that led group studies. They collaborated a lot in class. They become critical thinkers and problem solvers. And I think that is going to be crucial in today's society, that we are creating thinkers. You will be surprised at the number of students that need you to help them think critically or help them solve problems. You want to make sure your learners are challenged critically and that are able to solve problems. They challenge the system. When I was a teacher, a science teacher, and I began to deliver the instructions, and a student will come out of the blue with something beyond what I thought of as a teacher. And all I could say is, let me get back with you on that. But you believe, as an educator, I marked that because I said to myself, I have a student in my class that's going to challenge what I say, challenge the material, so I better be on point. And they become lifelong learners. And I think that's the ultimate goal that we're looking for. Our next slide. So now is an opportunity that we're going to hear from the experts. And this is very important because it's great to hear from a person at the district level, but when you hear from people who are in the trenches, that are site-based, that fellowship with students on an ongoing basis, that develop curriculum, that monitors the curriculum, that makes sure that student learning, the data is making sure students are improving. That's important. So we're going to start out with the next slide. I'm going to ask Mrs. Brim to take over.
All right, good morning, everyone. I do want to thank the Office of Strategic Partnerships for asking me to come and be a part of this webinar on owning your own learning. Like she mentioned, my name is Ms. Brim, and I am a 7th grade health teacher at Tyrone Middle School. So as you can see, I have some points that I think are important to students owning their own learning, and they are applicable across all boards, I think, from elementary to high school. I do want to start off with creating a daily or weekly schedule. I think for students and parents, that is very important, just to kind of have a written out plan of what you're going to do, what your day should look like. I know at Tyrone, as a teacher, we're required to put out weekly agendas. So every Monday, the student knows everything that they are going to have to participate in, every assignment that's going to be due, every live lesson that they're going to have for the week should be laid out on that agenda. And then they can go through, especially as a middle school student, where there are 6 or 7 different classes. You want to make sure that you're balancing out everything properly and then being able to check mark once assignments get completed. Sometimes, you know, schedules don't always work out, things come up, but then having that visual to say, oh, I didn't do this yesterday, let me do it today because it's due on Friday. Just having that plan is always helpful, not only for students, but for adults as well. My next point that I want to discuss is having a reward system or scheduling movement breaks. We call it PBIS, which is positive incentives. Super important for a student. We use them in the classroom, at school, as a school-wide initiative, just to promote positive behavior to get students to do what they are supposed to do. We talk about, you know, them owning their own learning and being self-directed, but some students need extrinsic motivation. And so that's where we come in to provide rewards for them. And then you want to use whatever's going to motivate your child. So you know them. If it's, you know, maybe I'll prepare your favorite meal, or we'll have movie night at the end of the week, as long as you complete your assignments in your classes this week. You know, whatever the motivator is for your child. Some students, they have that intrinsic motivation to where receiving an A is all the motivation that they need. And that's great, but we want all of our students to be able to own their own learning, and some students need a little push. So that's where the positive incentives come in. I'll give you, you know, your favorite piece of candy. And with that, I want to talk about scheduling movement breaks. So that could be a part of the schedule as well when you are planning out your day-to-day or hour-to-hour, what your schedule is going to look like. You want to insert that time to where I'm a health teacher, so I'm all about, you know, taking a mental break or having these mental checks to make sure that you're not in front of the computer the whole time or the whole day, because we know you can get distracted. Even adults, we get antsy sitting down, being in front of a computer all day. So scheduling those positive movement breaks, but then they can also be used as incentive. For example, if you have a basketball goal at your home or in your backyard, maybe saying, okay, complete your live lessons or go to tutoring with your teacher, and once you're done, you can get 30 minutes outside to play basketball or whatever the motivator is for your child. But inserting those pieces and those breaks can be a huge help as far as them having a goal looking for something like, okay, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to do my best because my mom said or my dad said I can go outside if I finish this. The next point is the effective communication. So digital learning is new to all of us, teachers, students, families, and I think effective communication is super important at this time. As a teacher, we know that there's so many things going on in everyone's homes. We know that our students come from many different backgrounds and walks of life. So having the student being able to communicate to us if there are barriers or issues is a huge part of them owning their own learning. We have created so many outlets, whether it's through Focus, our Outlook email, you can communicate through Teams. I created a Google number, or most teachers have given out their cell phone numbers at this point. So there's really not an excuse for students not to be able to reach their teacher. And then with that comes the flexibility of the teacher. I know most teachers are being super flexible with due dates. Don't count it a loss if the assignment was due on Friday and something came up, you couldn't get it in. If you communicate with the teacher, I'm sure 9 times out of 10, they will let you still turn in the assignment and get credit for it. That there's digital issues, there's, family barriers, everyone's going through their own thing. So I just think communicating, and I know sometimes communicating can be a little hard, not just for students, but for adults, but having that door open to where the student does feel like they can go to their teacher is super important in them owning their own learning. A lot of things have been altered as far as grading scales, like I mentioned, due dates, and then some teachers are excusing assignments if there is a good reason. So a lack of communication should be enough for them not to be able to pass the class, especially during this time. And the last point that I have is accountability. And again, I know we're talking about students owning their own learning and being their own directors, but we all need someone to hold us accountable. Even as an adult, we go to our jobs, and yes, we know our jobs, but we even get observations, or we get reviews where we have to be held accountable. So especially with middle schoolers, when I first started teaching, someone told me, you treat the middle schooler just like you would treat the elementary child, that they need those same reinforcers. You have to tell them things multiple times because they don't always know. So you want to get their work, give them the opportunity to do it. It has to go a little bit further than, did you turn this in? And a yes, you have to say, okay, let me see what you did. Let me see what you turned in. Until that trust is built to where, you don't have to do that anymore. But the accountability still has to come from the parent or the guardian. I'm going to share this brief experience that I had recently where I assigned my students an assignment to do a Flipgrid, which is a video that they create on their phone. I wanted them to video them either creating a healthy meal or recording their mom or whoever creating a healthy meal. And then I had them questions that they needed to answer. Well, one of the videos I received from a student, he didn't record anything. He just had a slide that said, I didn't record my meal, so I'm just gonna list the nutrition facts. And it was like the calories, the vitamins, the minerals, but he didn't tell us what he made. He didn't answer any of the other questions. He didn't tell us the food groups. And so he submitted that, and I was kind of like, okay, that's not necessarily what the assignment was, but he submitted something. So the next day I go back on and I'm checking the work, and it's the same student. And this time he submitted the assignment again, but he's making breakfast. He made scrambled eggs and pancakes, and his mom is holding the camera. And she's aiding the conversation. She's saying, okay, you know, add milk into your eggs. What is milk? What food group is it a part of? And he's answering these questions. And so I just thought it was great how his first effort or assignment that he turned in didn't meet any of the expectations. But I'm assuming that his mom saw that and was like, we're going to do this over the right way. And so again, just having that person to hold the students accountable while they're owning their own learning, because they don't always understand that you need to read the PowerPoint, you need to read the text before you do the quiz. They'll just go right to the quiz. So those are my main points that I think are really important for a child to have when it comes to them owning their own learning. Ms. King, can you go to the next slide? So I found this picture to kind of describe what I see a lot and what owning your own learning looks like to the middle schooler on Facebook. So if you can see, there's different steps that the student needed to take, and he's skipping right to clicking that the assignment is done. We know that in their brain, it's not fully developed, and so the way that they read information is a lot different from the way that we read information, which again just goes back to that accountability piece and being able to check what they're doing while we're wanting them to own their own learning and be their own directors and take ownership of just this digital time in their education. So thank you. And I don't know if you have questions or if you want to write in the chat, but that's it.
Okay, next slide. So this is Mr. Whitaker.
Hello, I'm Mr. Whitaker, Assistant Principal at Countryside High School. First, thank you for allowing me to do this. The first thing that I wanted to go over, really the first thought that I had was the parents to kind of do a reflection. We're talking about high school, we're talking about a little bit of a different animal in regards to elementary and middle school students. But I think the most important thing that parents can do is do a self-reflection and remember that sometimes we think that the high school students are already adults. And we need to keep in mind that as in elementary and middle school students, that our high school students are still developing as well. So they're going through, different things at home. Families losing jobs, they have their siblings at home, they're trying to do their work at the same time. They're missing out on high school experiences, the social isolation. So this is still impacting them. Some of them may not show it, but it's still having an impact in them. So just really understanding that they are still developing and they're still, trying to figure out a way to get through this. And this is something obviously none of us have gone through before. So just before I go over the other steps, having parents do that reflection to understand what their child is going through, that they're still trying to figure out how to be adults, and adults ourselves are still trying to figure out how to get through this ourselves. So just having compassion in that regards. So the first thing, high school students still want to have a routine. However, I think it's important to make sure that routine is flexible. There's live sessions, obviously, where, flexibility isn't always available. But, if a student is child is struggling with an activity and, getting flustered, don't be afraid to have them just go on to something else that maybe is a little more easy for them to do. Clear their mind and then come back to it at another time. But having that flexibility is important. Physical movement, you got to remember in school, they're getting up in the classes, they're doing group work, they have, the restroom breaks, and they're always moving around. So making sure they're not just sitting there trying to get everything done in, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours at one time. making sure that they're getting up, doing some physical movement, exercise, and make sure encouraging exercise, exercise outside of video games would be probably best. We're talking parental and peer engagement. If possible, try to work with your child with some of the work just to kind of show them support, you know, as much as you possibly can work through it, but it'll show them support, that they're supporting them. You might help them out a little bit. And also, one thing that I would suggest if they haven't already is, you know, trying to get on FaceTime or whatever their social media outlets are, and, you know, working with one of their friends through social media with some of the assignments. That might be a good idea so they can have some of the interaction. High school students, this may apply to some, not all, but if your child does have trouble focusing, remembering what to do, it might be a good idea just to have a to-do list. This would be a written one so they can physically see it, what they need to do for the day or week, whatever you think might work best for your child. But, you know, once they get through, then checking it off, kind of keeping them focused on what it is that they need to do for that day. This one might be difficult as well, limiting distractions. It's obviously very hard to focus when, you know, they've got siblings running around, and it's, maybe their younger brother or sister is watching a cartoon or something like that. But as much as possible, try to limit distractions, whether it's them going outside to work, going by the pool, going into their bedroom, whatever it is, just try to limit it as much as possible so they can try to stay engaged. And then an important piece, which is very important in this online environment, is communicating with the teachers. Parents or students should be reaching out to the teachers if they have questions. Don't feel, you know, afraid to reach out to them. Myself and my experiences, many parents have reached out to their teachers for help. Sometimes they've gotten emails, something like that. So a lot of them copy their emails to me, or they'll just come directly to me and ask for help in their classes, and then I'll communicate with the teachers. So whatever it is that you choose, at the end of the day, I'm going to be communicating with the teacher to communicate with the parent. But the communication either from the student or the parent or both is a must in this online environment, so there's not any confusion, so everyone knows what's going on. And the last thing that I want to talk about, especially high school students, we're talking about them, you know, engagement is clearly, you know, can be an issue. Some of the students kind of losing that will to do some of the work or whatnot. The best thing that I think you can do, it may not work, it may work for some students, but we can give it a try, is simply talk to your child. And what that might look like is, again, remembering that they're still developing and they're still growing, they're still learning how to get through this. They're missing out on their high school experiences. You're gonna have a conversation with them, try to focus that conversation, you know, on the fact that you understand the difficulties that they're going through, that they're missing out on a lot of stuff. And obviously this can take a toll on anyone. But just let them know you understand that. And at the same time, letting them know that the importance of making sure that they keep up with their work, because this will pass. This, I don't know when, but this whole, you know, Corona thing will pass. But their work is still going to be there. Their future is still going to be there. So their future success and future plans shouldn't be compromised because of the online platform. And so you really want to kind of hit home with them. What do they want to do in the future? What do they want to do when they graduate? What career do they want to have? A trade school, college, military. So they need to understand that it's easy to not do the work on the online platform, but like I said, this will pass, but their career and future will come, And so all of the work that they should be doing now is everything. It means everything for the future. So trying to have that conversation, make them understand that this still matters. Their future is still in front of them, would be a great idea. If possible, I would suggest trying to plan something nice for your child when this is over, whatever that may look like, whatever it is they can do, but try to plan something just fun for them to do that they may like. Again, what is possible, what you need to do, but at least, have something at the end of the road for them to look forward to. And so that's the end of my little presentation. Any questions on the chat or anything?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Whitaker. If anybody has questions, there will be a few minutes at the end of the presentation for just open Q&A. You can also, of course, type your questions into the chat. But right now, we'll take specific questions for our panelist, Sarah Trulson, who is from the Digital Learning Department. If anybody has any particular questions regarding Teams, the platform, which is all part of owning the learning, is using and mastering the platform. So Sarah is available for questions.
Hello. Feel free to let me know either in the chat or on the microphone.
Sarah, could you just highlight some of the pieces of digital learning and how would this look if we're moving forward with digital learning so parents can continuously be prepared to use this platform?
Yes, sure. So right now, as many of you are probably experiencing, we're using a system called Teams. So moving forward, the plan is to continue to use Teams. I know a lot of teachers have gotten excited about having this as an opportunity to change up the way they present their materials to students, which is kind of exciting. So I know a lot of teachers may be starting the school year using Teams in their traditional face-to-face classes. So when the new school year starts, your student will hopefully maybe have some experiences with using the Teams platform again. So that's kind of that spot where your teachers are going to set up to add the content, directions, assignments, so students know what their expectations are each day would be in our Microsoft Teams platform. But one of the other cool tools that we have in the district that's always going to be there is our wonderful Clever integration. So as your kiddos are trying to get to their digital textbooks or getting to Nearpod or getting to BrainPop or any of the resources that the teachers are sharing, they can get to that by going to clever.com/in/PCSB and go right in. They log in with their district username and password, and they can see all of the various programs that they have available to them. One of the nice things about that is we'll continue to have those digital textbooks. So if your student is taking a class in elementary school or middle school or high school, depending on the class, they may have an actual online e-textbook. So they don't have to bring back and forth that physical book all of the time. So that's something that we will continue to take advantage of during the rest of the school year and next year in our traditional way of work where we're all face-to-face, or in virtually if we are doing this again at some point. So that's going to be something that I know teachers are going to take advantage of, I hope even more, now that we've had that opportunity to kind of see how wonderful they are and how they can be integrated into the learning. Those two pieces are going to be things that continue. Also, meetings like this. So I know that most teachers are posting in their team at least once a week a time for students to meet with them live virtually. So at the same time, not necessarily the same physical space. Those things are going to continue as well as we're doing distance learning. You'll have that opportunity to check in with the teacher, talk to the teacher. If you haven't seen that happen for your student yet, reach out to the teacher just in case. Our kiddos are wonderful, but sometimes, as some of the other presenters have said, they miss little things in the course where the teacher may have shared that information. So it's important to kind of be asking them, hey, did your teacher post something about having a live meeting so that you're actually talking and hearing them at the same time? Just double check with them, because most teachers are doing something like that. So that's probably something that's been happening with that. The other great resource to be aware of that I think a lot of students haven't even known they had, part of the Office 365 platform that our Teams lives in is Outlook. So all of our students have email in the district. It's very secure email, so they can't just email anybody, and they can't get emails from each other or from people on the outside. But the schools are starting to use those student email addresses to share information. So if you have a senior or you have a student that's needing some more information about cool programs at their school, they might start seeing those come through their Outlook in their O365 account. And again, they can get right to that through Clever. They just log in, click on that, looks like a little envelope on their Clever dashboard. They click on that and they get right into their email, so they can get that information as well. The other cool part is kids can email their teachers. So if they're struggling with something, they can email them a question. So it's another way of communicating that kids have, and teachers can respond back that way as well. Are there any other pieces that you guys would like me to share, Dr. Brown?
Oh, I think that's it. Thank you so much for that information. And of course, if our participants here don't utilize it, it will be in the recording and on the website, so it will be seen and heard by a lot more parents. Ms. Kane.
Thanks, Sarah. That was great information. Nice overview, and especially about the Outlook email. We know that that's kind of a real secret out there. So I know it's getting out, and it's a good way, another good way for the students to stay connected. So now we'll take general questions and answers to the other panelists, if there are any out there, or if any of the panelists have something they want to add, something they thought about that they wanted to share before we close up.
Okay, so we could do our final slide. Okay, so for our parents, as in the objectives, these are some examples of some roles and responsibilities that I would like to just encourage. One of the key things is establish your family's core belief about learning or about education. Sometimes it's a subliminal message. Sometimes kids are just not clear how you feel about education. But I think it's a great opportunity during this digital home learning to actually share with your child, here are our core beliefs as your parents about education and about learning, and develop those core beliefs. And oftentimes it would be a great idea to reiterate the core beliefs so the students or the learners understand the parents' point of view. Know the district and state guidelines regarding engagement and your parental rights. Oftentimes in our office, we get phone calls from parents that are struggling with students with disabilities, that are struggling with not getting information back from their child's teacher. I would suggest reading that code of conduct to know your rights, not only to know your rights, but what is it that you could do as a parent that can help support your child? Know about PBIS, know about the tier process or MTSS process for both academics and behavior. Know what kind of supports and accommodations that the school system can provide to support your child. Know how to communicate and connect to your child's teacher and school. And within this particular bullet, it is important to know the right questions to ask. If you're having an academic questions, before you have a parent conference, write down key questions, not closed-ended questions, because sometimes our educators are not going to go beyond what you ask. So make sure you're asking questions that's going to drill down to getting a response that you need to support your child. And monitor your child performance. Be sure the work is grade appropriate. What do I mean by that? If my child receives all A's, you want to make sure the all A's are grade appropriate work. That if it's reading, my child did not get an A because they were reading on a first grade level. They received an A because they were reading on the third grade because they're in third grade. So make sure it's not only grade appropriate, but also make sure it's high expectations. The work is rigorous. So all of these key pieces are, I would use as parents that you probably want to take on as your responsibility. Next slide. So at this time, we want to thank you for attending. Again, as Ms. Kane mentioned, the recording will be uploaded on the website. You can find the recording at Home Resources on our website. And we thank all of our panelists for your input, for your expertise, knowledge in the area, and all of the advice to our parents. Thank you and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you and bye.